Hi everybody, I'm really glad you all came. We weren't sure who would be staying home watching the game today. I want to thank everybody, and my sister said I have to introduce my family. Yes, you did. And this is my sister Sarah and her husband Dave, and this is their daughter Hope, and my daughter Rebecca, and my son Max, and Rebecca's husband Mike, and Max's significant other Melissa. And I think that's all who's related. So I'd like to start by having a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. And the Serenity Prayer is in the program if anybody. And I'm doing the short version. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right. I wanted to start by talking about my mom and my dad, because my mom and dad were a pair. They were quite the pair, actually. And when my dad passed away, that was kind of one significant thing that happened. And then in the last 13, 14 years, my mom's been on her own. But I still think back on them as a pair, and they had a strong bond. They were married for 47 years, and as we say goodbye to my mom, I'm also saying goodbye to some of the memories of my dad, too, because, of course, that was there with my mom also. They were unwavering. They were loyal. They were steadfast and true. And but there were a couple times when my dad went and bought a truck. And my dad, if you knew my dad, he had many trucks. He had a Tonka truck most of the last, probably 30 years of his life. And once he asked my mom if he could go buy a truck, and she said no, and he went and bought it anyway. And so he spent about 3 nights down at the Bar Hotel in Lima. And I said, well, what happened, Mom? And she said, I just gave him no choice but to leave. But he was back. And the other time I remember was when they went out west with Sarah. And I don't know how old you were, 12? Oh, 16? Oh my gosh. A teenager on a long trip with her parents. And I stayed home. I was working at the time, and they all got back. I'm like, oh, welcome back. So nice to see you. And they said, we're not speaking. and my mom said, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. But then they got back into their normal routine, and things settled down. But my parents started off on a blind date. I'm not exactly sure who organized it. My mom said the only thing she knew about him was that he had false teeth. I'm like, why was that important? At least he had teeth. They had a lot of crazy adventures together, and she told me about their first apartment that didn't have running water, and it didn't have indoor plumbing. And they didn't have a refrigerator. They had to keep the milk on the windowsill outside. And of course, they were in Minnesota at the time, so that kept their milk nice and cold. But when I think back on that, I would have to say, they came a long way, baby, from that time. So they bought a lot of fixer-upper homes. My mom said that I learned how to wallpaper to save their marriage, because my dad would always kid my mom. It's like, oh my God, you're watching that Home and Garden channel again. That means she's going to have a project for me. And she thought up the projects, and he followed them through. So it was kind of a good thing. And she always had a honey-do list for him. They lived through second jobs. My mom going to college. They owned Allen's Poor Farm, which was on the the pictures that was in Leon, Wisconsin, when we lived there. They had a orchard in Cridersville, Ohio, and they used to come home and bring the apples and make cider in the backyard and all that stuff. There were some happy times. So it was a sad thing when Dad passed. But before that happened, some of the best times I recall were us driving in the car. When we lived in Wisconsin, we'd go for Sunday drives. And that was when everything was closed still on Sunday. You couldn't go shopping and people weren't working and stuff like they do now. And we'd go for a drive and we'd be singing in the car, and I'd be, it was before seat belts, I'd be laying in the back window of the car, and Sarah would be laying over the hump in the middle, right behind the seats, and we'd be all singing, "We Ain't Got a Barrel of Money." And that seemed to always be my mom's song, and once that came on, you could guarantee that she'd be up dancing if we were anywhere. But her independence sustained her, and her love of golf and her friends. She was a Wisconsinite. She started her life in Mauston, Wisconsin. As I was going through some of the mementos from her life, the receipt from the hospital was in there. It was $72 when she was born. So she didn't become a Tennessean until much later. And she had a little sign in her house that said, "I wasn't born in Tennessee, but I got here as soon as I could." So my mom was a first-generation immigrant from parents. I should say second generation. Her parents were first generation. Her great-grandparents on her mom's side had come over from Austria, and her dad's side were from Norway. I always say that their family ties were the stoic German types, If you've ever listened to Garrison Keillor's Prairie Home Companion, she came from the place where the women were strong and the men were good looking and the kids were above average for sure. She didn't like the old-fashioned ideas of her family. They always fed the kids first, and then the men I think ate first, and then the kids, and then the women. So she kind of bucked that whole system, and she became a bit of a women's liber, I think, through the years. She had two older brothers that you probably saw in the pictures. She comes from an area that has hunting season. One of my girlfriends still lives up there, and she had to change her wedding date because it was the first day of hunting season. It's kind of like having a funeral on Michigan Saturday. It's like, really? Everybody's busy. But, she had friends named Bubs and Birdie, and her nickname was Turtle because her maiden name was Terlson. And so she was from the Wisconsin side of the Mississippi. My dad was from the Minnesota side, and her ashes will be spread up there with my dad's. They were spread on the Mississippi between the two states, and hers will be there too. The other thing I just wanted to mention was that my dad wrote her a poem one time, and it was not worthy of publication or anything, but it was cute because he said that, her mom told her not to marry him, and his mom told him not to marry her. So it was kind of funny, but they did anyway, and the rest is history. So my mom was a teacher. I have that legacy, and I appreciate that. She had gone to nurses training after high school. She somehow graduated when she was 16. She went to nurses training, and she'd never had a biology class in her life. I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder you flunked out. But that was something that she regretted. I think she felt really bad because her mom had supported her in that and made that possible, but it wasn't in the stars for her. And soon after she came home, her mom passed away. So she said it was a good thing that she had been home with her mom before that all happened. A many years later, Sarah and I were in grade school. Mom decided to go back to school. And she said she wasn't a very good student, so it was hard. And there again, she and my dad worked together as a partnership, and they bought this house in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and it's still there. I went past it the last time I was up there, and it had an unfinished attic. And my dad, being the handy guy that he was, finished it off and put 3 bedrooms and a bath up there for college kids. And so the way my mom paid for her college was to rent those rooms out, and every Tuesday she would go upstairs and she would strip the beds and do all the laundry and clean the rooms, and I would go up there and I would look at all the boys' Playboy magazines. It was sort of funny. I learned a lot. You know, and if they were going out on a date, I would iron their shirts for 10 cents. So it was kind of funny. And, you know, going through like I said, the momentum, my mom was not a saver, but she saved little cards and letters, and there were letters in there from some of the boys that had stayed upstairs from them. And, you know, so they had touched each other's lives. My mom originally wanted to be a social worker, but you know, it took her 5 cities and 5 different colleges to get her bachelor's degree. We moved around a lot because of my dad's job. She started, and this is important to her, that's why she wanted it in her obituary. She went to the University of Wisconsin at La Crosse, she went to Sinclair College in Dayton, and she went to Western Kentucky and Bowling Green, Kentucky, and she went to Ohio State, Lima branch, and then she got her master's at University of Dayton. So that was important to her, that she had the tenacity to stick with it and keep going, and it took her a long time. She became a teacher because when you graduated from Lima, the only thing that was available was either teaching or nursing. And she'd already tried the nursing thing that didn't work. It was interesting because I didn't realize that my mom had started her teaching career as a learning disability tutor, and that's what I do. And so looking at that, I see, you know, that DNA runs through me. She started off making $6,500 a year, but by God, that was enough money to send her and Sarah to Europe. And she saved her first year's salary so that she could go do that, and they went and had a good time. She had 19 years at Washington McKinley. She taught first grade. And, you know, looking back, I think, well, she said she wanted to be a social worker. Well, teaching first grade at Washington McKinley was kind of like being a social worker. It was the inner city. Kids came from poverty. She always had extra clothes for the kids, jackets and mittens for them. Some kids would come in, you know, wearing the same clothes that they had worn the day before and wet the bed in. You know, it was not a good thing. So it was hard, and detaching from all of that was difficult. My mom was a Democrat. She, when we cleaned out her condo, she had a picture of Obama on her mirror in her living room. It was right next to the emergency number for the ambulance. You know, she had volunteered for League of Women Voters. She was a union member for the Lima Education Association. She was a rep for Ohio Education Association. There was a thank you note in her things about her planning a professional development day for the Lima teachers. And I just found that very interesting because we in Hilliard have a full-time person that does that job, but she had done it while she was still teaching. So she was a proponent of Planned Parenthood. She always said, you know, I taught too many kids who were unwanted, and that was her way of trying to give back to that. Like I said, she was a woman's libber, kind of, maybe in the closet a little bit. It was important to her that her daughters grew up to be independent, and she wanted us to have college education, which we got, thanks to her. And, she had had some friends whose husbands had passed away. One didn't have any insurance, and the other one got divorced, or yeah, one died and the other one, they got divorced, and she said, I don't want you to have to not be able to support yourself. And, you know, I'm really grateful for that, because that was something that I fell back on when that actually did happen in my life. She always said when her salary started to approach my dad's, they started to have a little more even power in the household. And it was funny because he started to do a little bit of cooking, and he started to use the vacuum cleaner once in a while, and some of those things. And the funniest story was when she was at happy hour with some of her fellow teachers, and my dad called and said, well, what temperature am I supposed to wash the pastels on? And he was doing the laundry. And that was so funny. So we kidded him about the pastels. Oh, well. My mom was independent. I remember my dad asking me when he was sick, you know, and he knew he was going to pass away. He said, what are you going to do with your mom? And I said, well, whatever she wants, Dad. And he said, yep, you're right. Yep. I know there were, somebody here said that she was one of a kind. Yes, she definitely was. And she didn't like to go to ask people for help. And I don't even remember what it was that sent her to therapy. I think she had some unresolved issues with her mom passing away when she was young and whatnot. And she went to the therapist's office and talked to the therapist, and the therapist started asking her some you know, pretty personal questions, and she had to, you know, have some emotional responses, and she walked out of there and said, well, that's enough of that. She picked herself up by her bootstraps and gone on with life. And that's kind of how Mom was. She was adventurous. She decided to take up flying lessons. She and my dad were getting ready to retire, I think, and she said, well, you know, if I get my pilot's license, then we can just fly all over the country, and we go to all of these places. And so she started taking lessons at the Lima airport there, and she went on her solo, and she ended up in Elyria, Ohio, and which is up around Lake Erie. Well, she thought it was Lake St. Mary's, and so she was like way off the wrong direction, and she had forgotten to set her directional doohickeys, whatever they are, and kind of ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. So she landed, she was running out of gas and landed in a bean field, only to find out, and this is her story, only to find out that there was actually a runway where she could have landed on the farmer's farm because he was a pilot. Only she landed in the beans instead. So that kind of ended, you know, my dad went, I don't think I'm going to be flying with you anywhere. So that kind of did the whole flying things in. But they did travel a lot. It's kind of interesting because they went to the Rose Bowl in 1985. I'm not sure, the Rose Bowl's not the thing it used to be when, in 1985. They've been to Europe, they've been to the Bahamas, they went on cruises, they had a timeshare that they golfed all over the place. And, you'd think that Mom had no fears. But yet, on the other hand, she would never go get her ears pierced because she was afraid of that. And she was afraid to get in the shower because she didn't like that water splashing on her. And it's goofy. She had her hair done twice a week because she would not do her own hair. Like, really? Are you serious? Anyway, all their travels ended up with them in Tennessee. The lengthened golf season and the woods and the deer, they loved living in the woods. And so they had basically all the good stuff of Wisconsin without the mosquitoes. For some reason, the elevation of Tennessee, you don't have mosquitoes above a certain elevation, so that was really great. This being Michigan Saturday, I had to say, when my parents first started wearing orange from University of Tennessee, I thought they were real traitors, because we're like an Ohio State family. And but I couldn't, I couldn't compete with Peyton Manning and Pat Summitt. Mom was all about Peyton Manning. Oh my God, he's a god in Tennessee. So, but she supported Dolly Parton's literacy initiative to get all kindergartners a book in their hand. And I thought it was kind of funny that, here she was teaching first grade, teaching kids how to read, but then she moved to the state that is like 46th out of 50 in their literacy rate. But they loved it there, and I think both she and my dad were both kind of hillbillies at heart. They loved going to the flea market. That was always a thing when we go down there, and their flea market down there, they sold snakes and they sold firearms and dogs and all rugs and all kinds of things, and they at one time bought some white geese. They bought these 3 white geese to put on the lake where my mom's condo was, and they called them the old maids. Well, the old maids didn't stay old maids for long because they ended up mating with the Canadian geese, and so we'd be like, oh, there goes the old maids, well, there goes the old maids' offsprings, and they were the goofiest looking geese, because they were like, what? They're white Canadian geese. So Mom had a pillow that we still have, and she loved the lake. She loved being by the water, and it said, if you're lucky enough to live by the water, you're lucky enough. And she considered herself lucky. Mom was a smoker, and she was a drinker, and this is the part, and I put it in the middle. I didn't want it to be at the end because it's not all that my mom was, but my mom was an alcoholic, and so was my dad. We loved him. I say this with no shame, with no blame or malice. It just was, and sorry, I knew this was going to happen. I don't have Kleenex. I say this because it's important that the silence be broken with the disease. I've spent 25 years in 12-step programs, and there's help for people whose families have been affected by alcoholism. I'm so grateful for the program and 12-step meetings that I've been to. I was also very blessed. Sarah and I got to spend time with my mom once she moved here. The last 6 months of her life, she was in Hilliard here at Carriage Court Assisted Living, and she was sober. It was some of the best times that I ever had with her, even though she was starting to have some dementia. We were able to sit on my back patio, and she loved sitting in my backyard. And I took her along the Scioto to look at the fall leaves and things like that. And she got to see how we lived, because her being in Tennessee, it was far away, and she didn't really see the daily life that we had here. So it became more intimate, and it was a sharing that we hadn't really had. She had another pillow, and it said, live long enough to be a problem to your kids. My kids said, Mom, do you still have that? I said, yeah, I'm saving it for you. But she was brutally honest and stubborn. She was a lot of things, but there's some things that she wasn't. She was not deep, and she wasn't prone to introspection, and she was not spiritual a whole lot. One time I walked in to her place, though, and I said, Mom, you're reading guideposts. That's so surprising. She said, well, just because I don't go to church doesn't mean I don't believe in God. I went, oh, okay, so I guess she believed in God. So she was not a good driver. Sarah and I can attest to the fact that oh my God, she made this U-turn in Washington, D.C. We thought we were going to die. My dad was always fixing the clutch on her car and her little MG and trying to keep her cars going, or she'd drive it into the side of the garage too close, and he'd have to pull the car over and get the dent out. She was not sentimental. She wasn't a warm, fuzzy person. She would never watch movies. I go, oh, Mom, let's get a movie and watch a movie. Oh, too emotional, can't do that. Oh, well. But all those secret emotions that she was trying to hide, she took with her. And, you know, you can never truly know somebody completely. You know, I knew my mom for 57 years, and there's always some things that people hold back, and I'm not sure that even she knows. You know, the Bible says that God knows even all the hairs on our heads are numbered, and He has searched us and knows us. So I leave it to that God has searched her and knows her. I'm kind of one of those people who looks for a sign. And the night that I got the call from Sarah that Mom had passed, and I was heading over to Carriage Court, I got there, and it's been, I don't know, a month ago probably now. I'm not exactly sure. Well, it was November 7th. And, you know, I was pulling up, and there was this big full moon shining right over Carriage Court, that big harvest moon, and it was starting to get dark early, and the time change had happened, so it was fairly early in the evening, and it just made me think that God was looking over her. You know, so all in all, I go, well, does it matter? Does it matter that she got the drama award in middle school from Longfellow? Does it matter that she was a camp counselor for handicapped people, or that she used to call my old boyfriend's what's his name, or that she, well, you could always tell which one she liked. She'd call them by name. If she didn't like him, his name was what's his name. And she hated to cook. She had a cleaning lady, you know, but by God, she painstakingly made Barbie doll clothes for Sarah and I. These things, I was like, wow, I can't believe she sat down there and made all of these, you know. And she planned birthday parties in our basement. She had a hole-in-one in golf. Not everybody gets a chance to do that. And, you know, I came across thank you notes from some of her students, Bradley Sprague, Alicia Harper, Rachel Williams. She taught them all how to read. You know, her legacy lives on in them, and her legacy lives on in me, and it lives on in Sarah, because we share her DNA. Sometimes we're like, oh my God, I remind myself so much of Mom. You know, we can't help it. She's part of us, and, you know, the relationships that we all had mattered. The relationships that you had with her, or that you had with us, and indirectly related to her, it makes a difference. And, you know, all those job offerings and certificates and events, and they all represent places where my mom and my dad's lives all changed directions. And there was a job offering in there I thought was really interesting, because it was a job offer to my dad to become a shop teacher. Well, guess what? My first degree is in industrial tech education. I was like, why did I not know that? Nobody ever told me that. Our lives would have been a whole lot different had he taken that job. So I guess there's only 6 degrees of separation between everybody. So we all kind of are a part of each other. And that's what I want to say about my mom. She and my dad both said they had a good life. And it was, they got to go to a lot of places and know a lot of people, and they loved us, and we loved them. And that's it. So I know there's stories, lots and lots of stories. So I'm just going to open the floor for anybody who wants to say anything about my mom, Joyce Allen. And Sarah's going to go first, because I just called on her.
If you don't know me, I'm Sarah LaRosa, and I am the younger daughter. Sorry.
She looks a lot younger.
Anyway, we did not plan these together, but it's interesting to look and see that we both perceived my mom in the same way. And but she planned it all, and she got really organized, and I just kept writing little things on pieces of paper and collecting things as I went, and this is the way it is. But one of the things that I did, and I'm not going to go into it, but She wanted to remember the good things, avoid the bad. What is the saying? Denial ain't just a river in Egypt. But anyway, so she only wanted the good things. And it used to make her kind of mad when Rachel and I would give her the truth or the reality of what really happened or how we perceived it. And it's like, why don't you just say, why can't you just remember the good things? And it was like, wow, okay. So living in an assisted living facility and starting to get some dementia, and Rachel and I tried really hard to make her life as pleasant as we could. I mean, I asked her what color she wanted the walls. She said spring green. And I said, you mean like a really bright kind of lime greenish color? And she's like, yeah. So that's the color she got. Peabody, you'd be thrilled, it was purple. She had a lot of purple that went with it. But so we tried, but one of the things that I did is I wrote her a couple of pages of just the good things. And I think Rachel may have seen it, maybe not, but she saw my other stuff that at Easter time, I always filled eggs and put little things in each one. It would say something like, I remember when you were a clown at our school fair. And the next one would say, thank you for a strong work ethic. And another one would say, I think I got my independence from you, or, just little things like that. But anyway, this one was just some of the memories, because that's what she really wanted. And Rachel had already gone through most of these, and I really don't need to go through them all. But she mentioned the sewing. If you knew my mother, would you ever have believed that she sewed? I mean, she made me a red dress with a striped pinafore over it. Back in the old days, we used to wear like the dusters, and then she made one to match for my doll. That seems pretty trivial, but it's what it represents, which is love. And she went to our PTA meetings. She met our teachers. In Minneapolis, she'd take us downtown to see the windows and Santa Claus and that sort of thing. We don't have a picture. Oh, we do have my great-grandmother and my great-great-aunt were on the video thing at my great-aunt Pat's house at Christmas. Boy, there's some stories to tell. Woo! But anyway, all the family would go over the river and through the woods to the farm in Wisconsin, and my uncle would always dress up like somebody. If there's any young people here, we're not going to go into that then. Okay, but anyway, it was just a really good time. Lots of family members. There'd be 20-some people playing bingo, and the prizes were not things fit to talk about. So, sometimes I forget how supportive my mother was. I mean, those 5 colleges to get your bachelor's degree is a lot, but she always supported my father. Anytime he wanted to move, we all just jumped up and went. She did tell us that she loved us, and I've met people that parents didn't, and so, I don't know, this is just a whole lot of stuff. Don't think it's matters to a lot of people, but the values of hard work, education, and independence. Amen, amen, amen. That is who she was. But I found some things that belonged to her. They came out of her little memory boxes. She had a few. I'm glad that there weren't a lot more because there was a lot of stuff in them, and it was interesting, and you could have spent a lifetime just going through her little pieces. But some of the things that she said were, well, here's one. I found these 2 ladies, and it says, when I get old, I don't want people thinking, oh, what a sweet little old lady. I want them saying, oh, crap, what's she up to now? And she did. She lived up to that. And she'd be glad I said that, too. and here it says, it's better to be absolutely ridiculous than absolutely boring. And we can attest to that one too. I'll let you guys, if you could, this is terrible. She started to have dementia and repeat things. And the one thing she repeated the most often was a country western song that I don't know, but something, and she didn't remember it real well either, but it was that God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy. And so, yeah, Mom, you were too, so it's okay. This was in her stuff at the end, and it says at 70. It says, instead of old, let us consider older, or maybe oldish, or something, anything that isn't always dressed in sensible shoes and fading underwear. Besides which, 70 isn't old. 90 is old. And though 80 is probably old, we needn't decide that until we get there. In the meantime, let us consider drinking wine, making love, laughing hard, caring hard, and learning a new trick or two as part of our job description at 70. She probably wanted this read here today. That's my guess. So, and the last one I have, I don't know. This is just all I got. It says, life should not be a methodical journey to the grave, with the goal being sure, safe arrival in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, flute of champagne in hand, screaming, what a ride. That was my mother. We're going to miss her. We already have, and this is for you, Mom. Thank you. And if anybody else has anything that they want to share, please feel free at any time.
You can go first. Go now.
Okay, oh wait, I should probably speak into this. Okay, hey guys, I'm Hope, for you guys who don't know me. Sorry, I'm sort of losing my voice currently, and my mom told me, like, originally that we all had to talk, so, yeah. And my things are on my phone, sorry, different generation, sorry. Yeah, this is how my generation works. We don't write stuff on paper anymore. Okay. So I found these things. I have 2 quotes. I'm going to share one now. But it's be who you are, not who the world wants you to be. And to me, like, that's a lot who my grandma was. She was very independent. Like, I remember when I was 6, and we learned, like, smoking's bad for you in school. And I asked her, I was like, Grandma, why are you smoking? It's bad for you. And she's like, because I want to. Like, that's who she was. She did what she wanted. Like, she took flying lessons. Like, she had pink golf balls for when she golfed. Stuff like that. It was like who she was. And I remember, like, when, for those of you who don't know, I go to University in North Carolina, Wilmington. I'm a freshman there. And when I told her, she was like one of the few people who right away was like, good for you, go do that. Like, go, like, gain your independence, get away from home and all. Because she, like, valued that. And she also told me, don't forget the ibuprofen and Band-Aids multiple times. But that's who she was. Yeah, and then this is my last quote. I'm not going to talk a long time, sorry, voice going away and all. But it's called When I'm Gone. When I come to the end of my journey and I travel my last weary mile, just forget if you can that I ever frowned and remember only the smile. Forget unkind words I have spoken, remember some good I have done. Forget that I ever had a heartache and remember I've had lots of fun. Forget that I have stumbled and blundered and sometimes fell by the way. Remember I have fought some hard battles and won. Here's the close of the day. Don't forget to grieve for my going. I would not have you sad for a day. But in summer just gather some flowers and remember the place where I lay. And come in the evening when the sky paints, or when the sun paints the sky in the west, stand for a few moments beside me and remember only my best. Because that's how I feel my grandma would want us to remember her, by the best and the good she's done. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
crap, now I have to say something. I'm Rebecca. I'm Rachel's daughter. So I feel like whenever someone passes away, you always try and come up with a phrase that most explains what that person was to you. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but my grandma was kind of a role model in some ways. And I'm kind of, as if people have been talking, I keep thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm turning into my grandmother, but in the good way, in all of her best traits, I feel. She told me to go and have an adventure and always supported my education. She helped support me through my undergrad, and I remember she sent me a check for my tuition for 1 quarter at Ohio State, and with it she had this note that said, here you go, so you can get on with your life. Which was such a sweet gesture, and that was so her, she wasn't very sentimental, but I feel like that really, I don't know, that's my strongest memory of her, because it just sums up her support, but she didn't necessarily want it to be this really like gut-wrenching moment, I suppose. But she had this amazing marriage to my grandfather, and I've always thought of that when I am in my own marriage, to strive to have something like that. And I'm trying to become a pilot too, like my grandmother, and I feel like always trying to be independent too. That's always something I know before I got married. I always said that was the strongest thing, to make sure that I was independent as her. Thanks, honey. But yeah, I'm really grateful to her, and I hope one day people say that I was like my grandmother.
I guess it's my turn. My name is Max. Thinking about Grandma Allen, I'm not the most sentimental person. She may not have, maybe I got that from Grandma, I don't know. But just thinking about it, there's really 3 things that came to mind for me. First one was cigarettes. Whenever we went down to visit Grandma or Grandma came to visit, I was there. And then the other one is the Bean Pot restaurant. If you've ever been down to where she was in Tennessee, that was probably the thing I look forward to the most. I was a little kid, before even middle school, it's just kind of, are we going to the Bean Pot? They have a menu and they spell everything wrong because it's sort of hillbilly. It was great fun. Yeah, and that's just the thing that sticks out. But then the last one, at least for me, was these newspaper clippings. And she used to send them in a big packet to my mom when I was in high school, and I'd have just, usually the Zitz comics, if you're familiar with the comic strip. It's some teenage kid that's going to school or whatever. But even when I went out of state to go to undergrad, the newspaper clippings kept coming. And that was usually the only piece of mail I got. Well, not the only, but that was the only consistent one. And I'd walk down and I'd have something to look forward to, and there was. I'd still get things from my parents too, but it would always be there, and I don't know, it's just one of the fonder memories I have of Grandma. That's all I got. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Rachel, I've got one thing to say. She said, don't email me. She said, send me a letter so I can read it over and over.
She liked letters, yeah. And she saved a lot of letters, too. So, I'd like to invite everybody to lunch. We're going to the, Rusty Bucket, thank you. I was going to say Cracker Barrel. That's where I always went on the way to go visit her. And you're welcome. They'll have the game on. We'll all go root for the Buckeyes. And I'd like to close with the Lord's Prayer. If we could all make a circle, that would be really great.
Whose Father? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Go Bucks!
I forgot about that.
She said, oh yeah, I forgot.
I did remember.